Hey guys, welcome to class for Wednesday, September 16th. We're going to be peer reviewing today. So if you see my screen, I'm starting with our calendar. So this can help you to find the link to go for peer review today. Hopefully you've already posted your rough draft for peer review. But if you haven't, the way that you'll do it is you'll go to our calendar. The homework was to finish your rough draft and post it to the peer review Google Doc located here. When you click in here, it'll take you to our classes peer review folder. You're going to see folders for all three classes. So we have one for the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 12 o'clock class. You'll want to go into the folder for your own class. Okay, so you're going to be reviewing your own classmates' work. All right, so when you go in, I'm just going to go into the 10 o'clock class to show you an example and kind of talk to you about how I would give feedback. What you'll see here, I'm going to be using this sample paper, but you can see that Avery and Maddie have already posted their rough drafts for our peer review tomorrow. When you get in, you will see a lot of different essays for peer review. So a lot of you might be like, okay, I know how to get to the paper, but what do I actually say to the student, right? I'm going to move this form over into every folder here so you guys can have easier access to it. But the peer review feedback form is right here. And what you can do is you click on it, is you can just kind of keep this up, or you can go through it and sort of write down notes. Okay, this is what Ms. B wants me to pay attention to as I read my peers' paper. So these are the scoring considerations. So these are the things I'm taking into consideration when I grade the paper, okay? One of those is purpose and audience. So is the student, as they're writing, are they addressing an academic audience? Remember that academic audience may or may not be familiar with their sources. So it's really important for the student to be very clear and concise about the two sources, as if the reader of this paper has not read them. And so under research and evidence, this is a lot about how the writer is using evidence. So is the evidence strong? Does it support the kind of claims that the student's making? And also, is that evidence cited appropriately? So we're looking at in-text citations in MLA format, which is where we use the author's last name and page number. And you know, those kind of MLA specifications. The next one here is looking also at editing. So editing is a part of this, you know, is the student going through and punctuating titles correctly? That's a really important thing to do, especially for when you're writing for an academic audience. There's an expectation that you've kind of gone through this paper with a fine-tooth comb. And then this too also says, does it fit the length requirements? Remember, this paper is supposed to be 3 pages minimum, so things like that. And then exploration, what this is about is this the writer thinking critically about these two sources? So instead of this being sort of a simple compare paper like Nadine Burke-Harris and Mona Hanna-Attisha, they're both pediatricians. Well, that's an interesting comparison, right? But it's not like digging really deeply into what each person's saying and how their arguments are connecting, right? So you want to make sure that writer is pushing into those sources and thinking critically about them. All right. Then in part 2, there's just a little checklist that you can go through for the student, making sure that they're following those MLA specifications. So things like, are they double spacing their paper? Is their font Times New Roman? Are there paragraphs indented? Is there a heading? And does the heading have all of the standard information, which is name, instructor's name, course, and date? Is there a title? You know, things like that. So you can go through this and kind of look for things. And what I did is I just have this sticky note and I was just like, okay, these are things I want to really pay attention to as I'm giving feedback. So, you know, making sure it's an academic audience. being more specific, things like that. So you can go through this and kind of make notes for yourself. You could print this feedback form if you have a printer and you want to, or you could keep it just up side by side as you're reviewing the paper, okay? So you're going to go into the class and you are going to review 2 papers, okay? It's very important though. Make sure when you go into the paper that this paper does not have a bunch of other people reviewing it, right? Each paper needs 2 reviews. We want to make sure everybody's paper gets reviewed. So you want, maybe you scroll down the list, go somewhere where there's a person who has no feedback yet. That'll be the person that you can review for the day. So I'm just going to click into this sample paper. This is a sample paper I've used with you in a couple other class videos. If I were giving feedback on this paper, there are a couple things, like maybe an editing issue that I noticed just right off the bat, is that the student here is underlining the title, okay? And there's also a lot of space around this title, and in MLA, you don't need all this space. The whole document's gonna be double spaced, so there's nowhere where there needs to be this quadruple space, which is what we see between the date and the title and the title and the paper. So here I might just, if you highlight the problem area, you can add a comment here and you can say, hey, this title doesn't need to be underlined and it looks like there's extra spacing. Make sure you are only double spacing between the heading and the title, and then the title and the body of the paper, okay? As I'm reading through this, now I don't have time, and you guys don't want to just read through this whole thing, but these are some things I was noticing before as I was reviewing this paper that this student could go back in and work on. First of all, you're going to notice this student does not punctuate her titles. In fact, that happens throughout the essay. So if you read through the sample essay, you would see that. So you would want to, tell them, make sure to punctuate titles. And remember, we do that not just because it's grammatically correct, but remember, this is an academic audience. There is an expectation that you give credit to your sources in an appropriate way. And so definitely we would want to honor that title with the correct punctuation. So you could add those kind of comments there too. As I look through what I noticed about this claim, it's a really strong claim. This student's talking about last year's Common Read, which was a book called Evicted. And she's essentially saying that both of these sources are very interested in discrimination based on race and sex and how that contributes to poverty in America. Okay, so that's really strong. But as I'm reviewing this paper, what I notice is that most of her evidence is about, not just about poverty, but actually about eviction and housing, which is something she leaves out of her claim. And so I might give her a note, I notice that most of your evidence is about housing and evictions, right? Be sure to tie your claim into that as well, maybe talking about how poverty contributes to higher eviction rates, right? So making sure, as I'm looking through the evidence of the paper, does the evidence match the claim? If the evidence doesn't, or is maybe gesturing toward the claim, these are things you want to make clear to the student, right? Because they may not realize. They may have started the paper thinking, I'm really just going to look at poverty and, how it is exacerbated by some of the systemic racism and sexism that exists in the country. That's fine. But as the paper started going, you got more interested in housing and evictions and how that has a higher impact on, people of color or women or whatever. So that would need to be made clear. And then, just to give you an example too of what you can do, down here toward the bottom, if you're looking at a conclusion, that conclusion really needs to drive home why this matters, right? A lot of times conclusions can be the weakest points of the paper, which is unfortunate because it's the thing that you leave the reader with, right? So you want it to be strong, and you want it especially to, um, I don't know, express why this ultimately matters. And so if this were not as strong and it was just kind of more of a repetition of what's happening elsewhere in the paper, you might give a final note here about, you know, really push into why this matters, right? Why do evictions matter now more than ever? Okay, now, of course, this was last year's paper, but you could say a lot about evictions right now in the pandemic, right? Because we actually, some states have actually instituted these laws banning evictions right now because people are in such dire economic straits. So maybe bringing it into something that's happening right now, that could be a way to push that conclusion and show us, okay, this is why this really matters. Now, if you want to leave the student with an overall note, okay, so something about the strength of the student's argument or anything like that, then you can leave them a note by just commenting toward the end. You know, if you just have a final note that you wanted to leave here, final note to student, right? So some good final feedback. And then you can also kind of check their works cited page, some of their MLA specifications, etc. So use the comment feature. It's just the easiest one to do. Do make sure that you hit comment though. See, I almost didn't right there because if you don't hit comment, it may not save as a comment. All right. If you have any questions about how to do this peer review, then just let me know. You have until the end of the day to give feedback to 2 students, but do make sure that you give feedback to 2 students. A lot of times in our class blog, I'm asking you guys to do the same thing, and you're only going in and giving feedback to 1. We're giving feedback to 2. That will make sure everybody gets some feedback. And also, the more papers that you read, I promise you, the stronger your writing becomes too, because you learn a lot from your peers, especially about how they write, how they express themselves, how they cite material, etc. So pay close attention, you know, dig into their essays and give them that good feedback, and you know, really what it's showing them is some compassion and grace, which is really a wonderful thing. All right, let's go through your calendar just real quick. Make sure again that by the end of the day today, you give feedback to 2 papers using that feedback form. You have a daily write today as well. That is, you might have to do it tomorrow because it's about how peer review went, what was most helpful about doing it, and then what was helpful about the feedback that you received as well. I will be in the space all day tomorrow giving feedback myself. So this will kind of serve as a conference on this paper. Make sure that you get in and look at my feedback as well. Ms. Black will probably be in the space doing that too. Don't forget, for Friday, you need to finish the RET Lab module revision. After that, we are just working on finishing this paper up. Don't forget, Ms. Black has office hours tomorrow from 1 to 3, but you can email either me or Ms. Black, and we can set up a separate conference if you'd like to do that too. Just shoot us an email with a time that would work for you. The other thing is the Writing Center link. If you want to set up an appointment with the Writing Center, they are free. You can set up the appointment. You can do it via Zoom. So you can consider doing that as well. You have until Monday to make final revisions on this paper. And so work really hard on this paper. Maybe send it to some folks that you know could give you some solid feedback. Pay attention to what your peers tell you as far as some of the revisions you can make. Conference with me, conference with Ms. Black, conference with the Writing Center tutor. You know, reach out there. There are a lot of resources that could help you make this final assignment really, really strong. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Email me if you have any questions, and I will check in with you. I'll see you class blog on Friday. There will be a little video about what you need to work on over the weekend. And then I'll see all of you on Monday for Monday session and a brand new unit. All right, see you soon.